My name is Mohammed Ben Hima. I am a researcher and teacher in this course Creativity and Society Laboratory, affiliated with Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to write a research paper, the basic elements of a research paper. This webinar is useful for novice researchers, especially in the undergraduate program, and even for master students and doctoral students. So in the first part, I'm going to present the basic elements of research paper within 15 minutes or so. And in the second part, we can have a question and answer session by answering your questions and even sharing with you some useful links that will help you to draft your research paper, regardless of your major, because I'm aware that different universities have different specifications for for students, and the students usually have to choose whether they are specialized in linguistics or culture or literature. So I'm going to try to cater to the needs of all the majors, because these are the basic elements of every, more or less we can say, every scientific research paper. So for the outline, I'm going to talk about some preliminaries, and then I'm going to start with the elements of a research paper, which are the introduction, review of literature, methodology, results or data analysis, discussion, conclusion, and references. I'm going to start with preliminaries. So as you know, research is derived from Old French research or rechercher, which with the prefix which means again. That is to search again and again and again till you find answers to your questions. So it is a systematic investigation to reach new conclusions. So research in Morocco or in the world is a scientific inquiry. That is, you have to follow some steps for your results to be valid and accurate, and for others to believe in them. So and the students should be familiar with the major components of a research paper before even thinking of the topic, because I know that at this stage you are still in the proposal. Some of you may not have ideas to start topics, or they don't even have supervisors, etc. So I hope this webinar will help you. So for a research paper, in general, it includes a title page, and the title page, here, the cover page usually contains the logo of the university along with the advisor or supervisor and the name of the student and his or her ID, and the academic year at the bottom of the paper. In fact, there are conventions of how to write a title page depending on APA or MLA style, but in Morocco and in the Arab world in general, you just follow this format that I told you about. So for abstracts, also, students keep asking whether to write an abstract or not. You should write it. Don't keep asking your supervisors whether we should write an abstract. You should write it because it is an element of research paper, whether you are linguistics trained students or literature trained students. And there are even components of how to write an abstract. And there is also the limitation in terms of words, because abstract should not exceed 500 words, and usually it is a summary of your research paper. It contains the objective, for example, the objective of this research paper is, and you discuss the methodology also, the sample, and the major findings or conclusions. So these are elements that should be in the abstract. And usually teachers, when assessing your research paper, they just follow these elements. If these elements are there, they will give you a good grade. If not, it depends. So for the introduction also, it has a structure. We studied introduction in composition and advanced composition, but it's not that kind of introduction that you have studied. So in research, the introduction should answer three questions, which are the what, the why, and the how. That is, what is your topic, how are you going to investigate that, and why are you going to investigate that, for example. This is the importance of your research. So these are elements even in the introduction. For the methodology as well, there should be a chapter on the methodology, that is the method that you followed in investigating your topic, whether it is quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method. And even for literature stream students, they can use transformative approaches and even some critical theories like post-colonialism, like gender, diaspora literature, etc. For results also, you can have a chapter on results. It's called, that chapter is also called data analysis, in which you are going to present the major findings of your research paper. Then discussion chapter. Here you try to discuss, you try to interpret the results, and you link them to the literature. That is what others have found, and to see whether your study has, addressed literature or gap in the literature. That is, it has brought something new. For the conclusion as well, even the conclusion is considered also a chapter. You can even say it's a chapter also, and it has basic elements. That is, you summarize what you have found, you state the major conclusions, you tell us about the limitations of research, that is, what are the problems before even critics could find them. You can just state them because you have done the research, and at this stage you know the problems of your research paper. And even the implications, and implications can be for practice or research, and even suggestions for further research. That is, what other researchers should look for in case they want to pursue research in the same area. And references, of course, and the references can be either formatted in APA style or MLA style, depending on the guidelines of your supervisor. So we're going to delve into each section of this. So for the introduction, as I told you, the introduction chapter contains the following elements. You should, in fact, for example, if I'm supervisor, I will try to look for these elements in the research paper of every student. So first of all, I will try to see the background of the study. That is, here you situate your study in the literature, and you identify a research gap. For example, I want to investigate the use of the mother tongue by Moroccan EFL learners to learn English. So I can say that mother tongue has been a controversial issue, and the researchers have many opinions whether or not to use it, etc. So for the purpose statement, that is, you state the purpose of the research, and you say, therefore, the current study aims to investigate the use of the mother tongue by Moroccan EFL learners, for example, in learning English. Then research problem, that is the statement of research problem. This is very important. For example, what is the research problem that your study aims to solve, so to speak? So, for example, the problem, you can say, Moroccan EFL learners use the mother tongue, and this minimizes their chance to, for example, to learn English. And then for research questions, also, for example, you can say this research aims to answer the following research questions, which are: what are the profiles of students who use the mother tongue? How often students or do students use the mother tongue? When do students use the mother tongue? And what are the effects of the mother tongue use on students' proficiency, for example, in English? For research hypothesis, also, this is a potential observation. For example, you say it is hypothesized that the mother tongue use will affect students' proficiency. And definition of key terms, you can leave this section to the literature review. And at the end of the introduction, you put the organization of the study or the blueprint. What does this mean? It means that you are going to tell us the chapters of your study. For example, you are going to tell us the first chapter is going to present the literature on the topic. The second chapter is going to present the methodology. The third chapter is going to deal with, for example, the results, and the last chapter will tackle, etc. So you tell us the structural elements that you are going to address. And by the way, the introduction chapter, although it is the first one in the research paper, it is the last one that should be written. That is, you should write it till you finish. Of course, you can have just a draft of it so that it can guide you, but leave it till the end, because at that stage you have, information about your research project. The second chapter is about literature review. That is, you talk to us about what others have done before you. So first of all, there are some steps that you have to do. Is that you should collect articles and research papers that address the research problems that you are interested in, and identify a gap in the literature. This is very important. That is what other studies have not tackled, okay? So you should tell us this. And of course, you have to do some readings, and by doing readings, don't go to, for example, YouTube or Google just to look for articles. There are scientific articles. I'm going to share with you some websites like Google Scholar, like ResearchGate, etc. Next, we have cite any information you take from any reference. That is, you have to, at this stage, you have to, when you read, don't just keep reading like that, because you are going to forget. Whenever you read something, you try to note it down and put the reference, okay, and the page number of the information if you are quoting from that article or that research paper. Then write a synthesis of studies. That is, you should summarize what studies have tackled, and don't be just descriptive. I mean, you should be also critical, so to speak. That is, you should criticize what others have not dealt with. And then, so for some websites, as I told you, so we have ResearchGate, but this requires you to have your institutional email. And unfortunately, many students do not have their institutional email. And you should know something. The Ministry of National Education and Scientific Research pays money for that. It has partnerships with Microsoft to get that email. And this email will help you to get access to ResearchGate, and some websites like Scopus, like sometimes Google Scholar, doesn't matter, but it will help you a lot. Some websites that are not for free, but for you as students are for free. So you should make use of that institutional email instead of your normal email. So for the website, if you want, I can share with you the browser to show you. So for this is ResearchGate. So this requires this requires an other websites, and there are some other websites where you can find information for free, like books.org and Sci-Hub, etc. So I'm going to go back to the presentation slides. So this is for the review of the literature. For the methodology chapter, of course, you have to follow some elements. So the first element is research design. Here there are two types of design, but these are two major types of design. We have quantitative and qualitative design, and we have a mixed method. Mixed method, that is when you combine both quantitative and qualitative method. And then we have some philosophies, so to speak. We have the first one, which is the post-positivism, that is deals with observation. We have post-positivism. We have pragmatic design or philosophy. We have transformativism. And we have grounded theory, that is you ground a theory in literature, for example. And we have also phenomenology, for example, when you are dealing with, for example, some social problems, especially in gender, when, for example, single mothers deal with their infants in society, for example, like Morocco. So this is phenomenology, that is, you study phenomenon, okay? And for pragmatic philosophy, I really opt for pragmatic philosophy because it allows me to do anything that is practical in my case. Then for the research objectives or aims, so you should have this research objectives, hypotheses, and questions. So these are similar. They are similar to the introduction. So you have to state them here also. Research variables. There are two types of variables. We have dependent and independent variables. Because I don't want to take too much time. So So for variables, you should know. For example, research variables, I'm going to go back to the example that I told you about the use of the mother tongue by Moroccan EFL learners to learn English. So here we have two variables. We have the dependent variable and the independent variable. The dependent variable depends on the independent variable, so to speak. So the dependent variable is the use of the mother tongue. So this is the variable that I'm interested in. And this variable has many independent variables. It depends on other variables like gender, for example, whether the student is male or female, whether there is a difference between males and females in using the mother tongue. Then we have the education level, whether there is a difference between, for example, sophomore students or senior students in using the mother tongue. So these are all variables that you can investigate. Okay, and there are also different variables. I just don't want to go deeper in this. So for research methodology, it is about the procedures that you have followed in your research, whether it is quantitative or qualitative or triangulation by Denzen. Triangulation, that is when you triangulate both quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data, by the way, are about numbers. For example, when you say 40% of students use the mother tongue, whereas just 20 don't use the mother tongue, for example. Okay, so these are quantitative data. Qualitative data, they have to do with interpretations, especially in thematic analysis. For example, when you are analyzing a novel, you should just have a structure, for example, themes. For example, in the the novel of, for example, Hope and Other Dangerous Pursuits by Layla Al-Alami, you are going to investigate themes, for example, immigration, for example, the role of women in society, etc. So these are themes. Okay, this is what we mean by qualitative data. For sampling, that is how you have opted for the text in case you are analyzing the novel, or the respondents in case you are doing, for example, quantitative research. And there are different types of sampling. We have probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling means that every single member has the chance of being included in, or every single person in the population has the chance of being included in the sample. Imagine that we want to investigate students at Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University. And by the way, the English department alone and this university in SAIS has 1,700 students. I'm not going to investigate 1,700 students. That's too much for me, and it will cost me a lot in terms of time, effort, and money. So I'm going to choose just a sample. And the sample, I'm going to choose it from population. For example, 100 students is, for example, the population, that is the whole society. But the sample is just a few students who are going to take, for example, part in the study. And there are different methods to choose them. We have first by probability sampling, as I told you, and probability sampling, we have the first one in probability sampling, which is a random sampling, that is you just go and randomly select students there. And we have also this is for probability sampling, and we have non-probability sampling. We have purposive sampling, that is when you choose the students who are going to take part in the study. And also when you are, for example, analyzing the novels, you are doing what you are doing is purposive sampling, that is it's you who have chosen the novel that you are analyzing, or the films or the movies that you are analyzing, in case you are doing your research in media studies or culture and literature. So this is for the sampling. You have to read about that because I'm just giving you summaries. For research instruments or materials, that is the materials that you have used. In case, for example, I'm doing a test with students, I am going to describe the test, how many, for example, sections are in the text, how many items are in the text, etc., etc. So these are research instruments. For example, there are different types of research instruments. We have questionnaires, which are used for quantitative data. We have interviews, and there are different types of interviews. We have, for example, interviews, we have open interviews or structured interviews, unstructured interviews, and semi-structured interviews. Structured interviews, that is, you have your questions already predefined. Unstructured interviews, you just go and you start discussion. This is used mainly for exploratory studies, but when you don't have a lot of information about the research problem, and when you are stuck, you just go and ask students, etc. And from the discussion, I try to identify the variables that you are going to investigate in your study. Okay. There are also focus groups when you have, for example, a group of 20 students, and you can do that even in WhatsApp. You see, and you give them a topic, and then they start discussing, and then you try to note down the elements that are relevant to your research question. And there are also, for example, we have content analysis. That is, you analyze the content of a movie or a novel. This is called content analysis. So this is useful for literary stream students and culture stream students. Also, so there are different instruments. And for the questionnaire, you can do it online because you cannot do it in paper form. And there is a website that I'm going to share with you, which is called Google Forms. So this one. So you have in your Google account, you try to go to Google Form, and you are going to have this platform, okay? And you start designing your questionnaires. I'm going to share with you my YouTube channel to show you how to do that. And you can even share that in WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups to get responses from students. So anyway, going back to the presentation. So this is for the instruments. And for data collection procedures, here you should describe how you collected data. You should tell us how you collected data. That is, should be done in a narrative form. For example, I posted the request on a Facebook group, and I asked students to kindly fill in the questionnaire on a voluntary basis, and some of them thanked me, etc. So you should narrate, because your study should be replicable. Because it's scientific research, so it should be replicable. That is, if I'm going to do the same study that you have done, I should have this knowledge, okay? So that's why you should talk about data collection procedures. And then we have data analysis procedures. That is how you analyze the data. For example, if you made use of a questionnaire, you are going to use statistics. And we have different types of statistics, whether they are descriptive statistics or inferential statistics. For descriptive statistics, just in numbers and percentages. For example, you tell us the majority of students said that they use, for example, the mother tongue, which is 70%, whereas just, for example, 30% who don't use the mother tongue. So this is descriptive statistics, and it's the easiest way. For inferential statistics, you are going to use some advanced statistical tools. You are going to find that on YouTube, and I'm going to share with you the links. For example, if you want to generalize the findings, you are going to use some different types like correlation, like chi-square tests, like independent samples t-test, like Koskel-Wallace test, like Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. So there are different advanced statistical tools. You can use them in advanced levels like master or doctoral stage. So anyway, then we have reliability and validity. So here you tell us about the reliability of the findings, that is, or the instruments. This tackles the instrument. That is, if I were to use the same instrument in different settings, would I get the same results? That is, whether the results are consistent. And there are different types to test that. We have inter-rater reliability when you are using, for example, tests. Whether two, for example, raters agree. For example, let's say that we are assessing speaking of students. Whether
Mohammed,
yes.
Can you expand the screen? You have lost the screen. You can expand it for the students to see well.
Okay, thank you for directing me. Okay.
Of course.
Can you see it or no?
Somebody must have clicked.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to read the screen. Yes. Okay. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
It's clear, yeah.
Okay.
Sure, can hear.
All right. So I'm just trying to give you everything about that. That's why I'm delving here in this. So for reliability, as I told you, there are different tests to test the reliability. As I told you, the inter-rater reliability. So when you have two raters, whether they agree on the same scoring. For example, I assign one student 20, the other should assign them 20. If I assign them, for example, 20 and the other 10, there is a problem with reliability. We have test, retest. This is another type of reliability. That is, when you use instrument twice, you test it at the beginning and then you retest it at a later stage. This is called test, retest reliability. And we have callback alpha. This is when you are using a questionnaire. And the questionnaire, sometimes the researchers use the 5-point Likert scale, and they should make sure of the reliability of the questionnaire by testing it using cronbach alpha, using SPSS. This is another software that I'm going to share with you. I think this is not required by here in Morocco, but in case of advanced stages in research, they will ask you about that, especially in the doctoral level or master, maybe master not that much, but doctoral level, they will ask you about it. So anyway, but for you as, for example, undergraduate students, you can have ideas about this. If you can use this, it's going to be good. But if you can't, it's fine. So validity, also the same. This is another aspect. That is whether your results are valid, okay? You should not fabricate data, because you should report exactly. If you have data, you should tell us exactly the data you have collected. If some students did not respond, you should tell us that some students or respondents or interviewees did not respond. You see, you should not lie, okay? Because sometimes students may not have time and they just keep writing everything, which is not ethical. And we're going to see that. Then we have scope and limitations and delimitations. Scope, that is the scope of your research. Of course, you are limited in time and effort and money, etc. So you should limit yourself. Sometimes students try to find some fancy topics, or they want to find problems of the whole world, etc. No, you should be specific. If you are analyzing novels, for example, choose just one novel or two novels. Don't exceed them. Don't analyze all the novels, for example, written by Laila Al-Alami. You should just analyze one. If you are investigating, for example, university, don't investigate all students, just a sample. So these are scope. And for the limitations, that is the problems that you have. And the limitations, I mean the limitations of your, that is the scope. They are more or less the same. For ethical considerations, here you should follow ethics. That is, you should try to keep the data of the respondents anonymous. You should not reveal their identities. You should not ask them about their names. You should not share the data set that you got with others. You see, and you should tell them this before starting the research. And there are, of course, a lot of ethical considerations. So for the results, or the methodology, I'm still in the methodology, so as a summary, so you should tell us about the research design, whether it is quantitative or qualitative or mixed method. So as I told you, quantitative talks about quantitative data, that is numbers, percentages. Qualitative, it talks about interpretations. This is mainly used for literary stream students and even for everyone, but for literary stream students and culture stream students, it's used a lot. And then we have mixed method, and I prefer mixed methods because here you tackle the problems of quantitative and qualitative, because sometimes you have numbers. For example, 20% students don't use the mother tongue, but I don't know why. So I should mix this finding with qualitative data. Therefore, I'm using a mixed method design. I'm advising you to search for Creswell 2018, who talked about mixed method design. Okay, you can even use different instruments. For example, questionnaire, you can use 2 questionnaires. You can use a questionnaire and interviews. You can use questionnaire, for example, and in the questionnaire you should, for example, you put open questions or closed questions. Open questions generate, for example, qualitative data, and closed question generate, for example, quantitative data. If you are analyzing a film, quantitative data is about the minutes, for example. For example, the director gives some episodes more minutes than others. For example, you can tell us that one scene, the author gave it, for example, 20 minutes. Another scene, just 10 minutes, which means, and another scene is just 2 minutes. Which talks about, for example, gender, just 10 minutes. So, for example, it's not important, and you can make conclusions this way. So even if you are literary stream students, you are going to use this. Okay, or even working in media, etc. So you are going to use this. You try to have, you should try to be creative. Qualitative data, as I told you, is about interpretations. And it is analyzed also through themes, etc. And quantitative data is analyzed through numbers, as I told you. And there is another program that is called thesis, the statistical package for social science. You have to install that, and you can use it. Otherwise, you can use just Google Forms. You can find more videos in my YouTube channel. Okay, so because this is very it contains lots of details, I'm going to move to another thing. So as I told you, for the research instruments, we have questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, observations, and tests. And then we have content analysis for literary stream students. When they are analyzing novels, they are doing content analysis. And for observation also, for example, you can observe classrooms, interviews, you can interview some authors, you can interview, for example, students, etc., questionnaires, the same, etc. So these are the research instruments. Then we have the population and the sample, as I told you, probability and non-probability sampling. You should read about this because each one has different types. For example, probability sampling has different types like random sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, etc. And non-probability sampling has different types like purposive sampling, voluntary sampling, quota sampling, etc. So different types. And what students use the most, if they are using questionnaire, they are using voluntary sampling because you post a questionnaire to Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups and you ask students to volunteer. So what you are using in this case, you are using non-probability sampling. Okay, and more specifically, voluntary sampling, because if students do not volunteer or they do not want to answer, they will not answer. Probability sampling is very hard. It's a really good one and very scientifically based one, but it's very hard because students should be selected at random, and you should have a sampling frame. That is, you should have the list of students. As I told you in English, for example, Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University, you should have all the students who are enrolled there. Okay, and you try to do a generator or via Excel, and you can just randomly select students. For example, you select 1 and you skip 2 and you select 3, etc., etc. So anyway, this is for sampling. For that data analysis, as I told you, there are some software programs like AntConc. This is used for corpus data. If you are working on translation, you can use this software. You can also go to YouTube to see how it is used. Landsbox also, developed by Lancaster University.
I just want to ask, can you please remind me of the corpus data? Because you mentioned the translation or something like that. If it's possible, can you please re-explain?
Yes. Yes, okay. Okay, so as I told you, I'm going to leave the questions till the end because many students have their questions. I'm going to help you with everything you want. For AntConc, I'm going to share with you a link that will show you this. For Spaces also, then Excel, this is the software by Microsoft, and In Vivo 10. Of course, you can go back to YouTube and you can learn all this software for your research, depending on your research needs. Okay, so for the results, once you find the data, you analyze the data, you have statistics, or you have, for example, interpretations. You are going to present those results depending on your research question. For example, you are going to put research question number 1, and you put result number 1, research question number 1, or hypothesis number 1. For example, how many students use the mother tongue, and you say, depending on the data, you argue for that. You try to find an answer to that question. And research result number 2, depending on research question number 2, etc., etc. For the discussion, what you are going to do is that you are going to put the research question or hypothesis, and you try to link it with literature in the field. For example, if you found that the majority of students like using the mother tongue in learning English, in English departments, for example, you tell us the reasons, and you should tell us other studies that have found the same results or different results. For example, I can say Cohen, for example, 2010 found the same, for example, found the same thing, and he did a study in Turkey, and in one of the universities there, the students prefer using their mother tongue in learning other languages because they don't have basic knowledge, etc., especially at the beginner level, etc. So you should argue, you should not just tell us about the results or hypothesis, you should present the data and link it to previous literature. Okay, for example here, this is an example if you are using hypothesis, because you can use either hypothesis or question, both are used, it's fine. For example, there is no statistically significant difference in the dependent variable, that is the use of the mother tongue, and for example, gender of students. For example, when I did the study, I didn't find any difference between males and females in using the mother tongue in learning English, but that is both male students and female students use the mother tongue the same way. So here I can report this, and I can find other studies that support or do not support this finding. So anyway, you can do it like this till you finish the whole research questions. And then for the last chapter, which is about conclusion, it's called summary, conclusions, implications, and recommendations. So you present the summary of your study, of the research, okay, and then conclusions, that is the findings that you have reached, and then implications, that is whether your study is useful in, for example, for teachers or for students or for example, literary critics or for example, translators. You see, you should tell us the implications. For example, in my thesis, for example, I can say that the use of machine-aided translation should be dealt with carefully because it produces erroneous output. Therefore, translators should not use it, etc. And I give recommendations. Okay, recommendations can be for research or even for practice. For research, for example, I can, for example, suggest that other research should investigate whether teachers use the mother tongue or not, or whether teachers use code switching when they are teaching, whether or not there is difference, for example, in using the mother tongue between, for example, high school teachers and university teachers. So these are future research, okay? You should do that. And then for limitations, as I told you, for example, the limitations of the study, that's the weak points that you have in your study. For example, you can say this study relies only on quantitative design and we don't have much qualitative data, or this study uses just a small sample. We have just, for example, 20 students. We should have more students. So you should tell us about limitations. Or this study in literature has tackled just feminism in Layla Al-Alami's novel, and therefore it should disregard, for example, other themes like travel narrative or diaspora or etc. You see, you should just tell us the limitations of the study. And recommendations, as I told you, there are recommendations for further research and even recommendations for practice. In case, for example, of translation, you can recommend, for example, some dictionaries or forums for translators to use in their practice, okay? So this is the conclusion, okay? So these are the elements. You try to note this down because you should write that, because if I'm assessing your work, I should find these elements in your thesis, especially for advanced levels like master students and doctoral students. The committee will not tolerate not knowing this because they are considered the basic elements. So then for the references, you have either the APA style or the MLA style. APA stands for American Psychological Association, and it has the 7th edition. This is the latest edition, and you should format your references that you cited in the literature like this. For example, you put the last name, the initials, comma, ampersand. Do not and, put ampersand some. I don't know whether you can see this clearly or not. Okay. And then you put if it is article or it is a book or it is a chapter, an edited book. So there are different conventions. And so briefly, you should go back to Google, for example, do Google image and put example of that reference. And the Google image will give you results, and try to follow them. And even there are some software like Mendeley, like Zotero, that can give you these references automatically. But those software use or make errors. Software, by the way, it's uncountable, so many students say softwares. It's software, whether it is plural or singular. So those software make errors, and you should not rely on them, okay? You should not rely on them. And you should always make sure of that, because this is one of the weakness of research papers in Morocco. And for example, if it is a book, you should put the book in italics and you put the publisher, etc. If it is a chapter in an edited book, you should do it this way. And you put the title of the container as well, and page range, or DOI, that is the digital object identifier. These are some numbers that are allocated to each article. For a website also, but do not rely on a website because it is not considered scholarly work. So try to use books and articles. I advise you to use articles because they are short and they will help you. So for websites, these are put this way. This is for the APA. For the MLA, there are differences. Okay, as you can see, you here you put quotation marks, etc. We can even organize webinars just specialized in citations. Because I think because this is a lot of knowledge, I'm going to move, because I think I took a lot of time. I'm going to move to your questions. Thank you so much for being patient, and you can ask me and I can provide you with potential answers.
Sim Mohammed, thank you for your lecture. It has been quite beneficial. For most of the target demographic, which are BA students and MA students, but very rich, nevertheless important for the future. Now we would like to welcome anyone who has any questions to ask questions, of course, one by one, and of course Mr. Mohammed will take the time to answer your concerns. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed.
Yes, welcome.
Well, can I ask now?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, first thing, thank you so much, because the presentation was like well done, good, structured, informative. We got a lot of information going on here. So my question was about the corpus data. You mentioned corpus data and its relation with translation, I guess. So I didn't really hear this point. So if it's possible, could you please re-explain it to me? Thank you.
Okay, for the translation research, there are different, but the main approach in Morocco, especially in the undergraduate program, so teachers give you some short stories to translate, or novels, some chapters in novels, and you translate that. And you tell us about, like you do commentary, that is, you tell us the difficulties that you have encountered while translating, and you categorize these difficulties. For example, whether they are, for example, in terms of syntax, whether they are in terms of morphology, or grammar, or semantics, or, for example, pragmatics, or cultural differences. So you should arrange those difficulties this way, whether they are related to machine translation, etc. So this is the typical research in Morocco. But if you are doing research, I don't know whether you are doing it in the BA degree or the master or the PhD, I don't know. So if you are in the master, or especially in the PhD, you are going to have some corpus data. That is, you should do statistical data analysis by taking, for example, software. I don't know whether I have it here, and Conc, etc. But anyway, so there is a software, you can just look for it, that helps you analyze the texts, okay? It's called corpus analysis. And this is really very advanced, because I cannot summarize it in 1 or 2 words, you see. But if you are in the undergraduate program, so don't worry about this. You just translate what your supervisor has given you and try to write a commentary on it, and that's it. So this is how it is done. I hope this answers the question.
Okay, thank you. Yes, clear now. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I want to thank you first, Si Mohammed, for this beneficial and very useful presentation. And my question is, like, for students who are like still struggling to come up with like a good research topic, for example, do you have like based on your experience, do you have like some tips, some ideas in mind, like to give to these students in order to come up with like a good research topic in an efficient period of time? And thank you.
Yes, this is an interesting question, and I think that is the question of the majority of students. For a research topic, you should first find the area in which you are interested, whether it's, for example, novels or short stories if you are literary stream students, or linguistics, which area of linguistics. If you want to be a teacher, for example, you should work in areas in teaching. I advise you to work on teaching because it's very highly recommended. You can investigate this topic that I told you about the use of the mother tongue by students. But because a lot of students are watching us, so I don't want this topic to be replicated. But you can, of course, I believe that every researcher will try to investigate this from different perspectives. Okay, so there are different topics. I advise you to go to Google Scholar and you look for articles. For example, if I am interested in the reasons for learning English, I just type them and I find articles. And the one with a lot of citation, I'm going to pick it and read it and find ideas. Go back to the recommendation section in that article, and I may find the ideas. And by the way, here by using Google Scholar, and this is a quick way to do it. You are going to open, for example, Microsoft. I don't know whether you can see the screen, by the way, because I'm sharing the browser screen. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So
yes,
you can
see the screen.
Yes, good. So you click here, for example, I read this article and I want to cite it, and gives you here the citing convention, whether it is MLA, APA, and I'm going just to copy and paste that in my research paper. So without having the trouble of for example, pasting it using different tools, etc., because it's laborious. Anyway, so for research topic, you should have to read first. If you don't read, I am not going to find any topic. I advise you to read, and then you should find the area in which you are interested. If you are interested in applied linguistics, and this depends even in your future work and even your career as a student. If you want to work in teaching, or you want to study masters, or in, for example, gender or translation, you should identify that research according to that, and should be specific. Don't try to be vague, and advise you to see what other researchers have done. You try to take samples of students who got good marks last year, for example, and you try to follow their, for example, their design and their research approach. I hope this answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mohammed, there are some questions there, written questions on the comment section. Would you mind checking them, please?
Yes, you can just ask me because I can't see the interaction there, so you can ask the questions.
All right. Do you want me to read them for you?
Yes, of course, because I can't see now I see just the browser here. I can't see anything.
Okay, so the first question is by Iman Known. The question is, please, could you provide us with websites where we could download academic books for free? Thanks in advance.
Yes, in fact, I have some websites here. So this is the first website. It's called SciHub. You can download articles in this website. You can take the DOI of the article, or the title or URL, and then you click on that and it will give you the article for free. Another website is Library Genesis. This is for books. The same way, you just put the title of the book and it will give you the book in PDF format and you can download it. The third website is, for example, here, this is the one, this is my favorite, it's called Z Library. And it contains also articles and books for free. For example, if I'm looking for novels, I can find many novels there. Okay, so these are all the main websites that I personally use in my research. Yes, other questions?
So Muhammad, what is the last one?
The last one, I'm going to share with you this link. I don't know whether you can see the screen of the browser. It's called Z Library. You cannot find this, by the way, these websites are not available if you look for them using Google. So I'm going to share with you the links there. So we have your email. We can share with you the links there.
Okay, Mr. Muhammad, there is another question by the real Meliani. So the comment says, thank you very much, brother. My question is concerning the review of literature. I mean, what's the difference between it and the research paper?
It's a chapter in a research paper. I mean, these are the elements of research paper. Your research paper should contain a title page, that is with the logo, etc. The dedication and acknowledgements, of course, you should, the dedication, for example, this is dedicated to my parents, for example, acknowledgements. And then we have a table of contents and review of literature, introduction and the review of literature. That is the previous work that you have, that researchers have investigated. But there is a difference because what I have noticed is that students in the literary stream or culture stream do not do this literature review. They integrated within the study. They integrated, for example, if I am analyzing the theme of immigration in Layla al-Alami's novel, I'm going to try to find out a structure. For example, put chapter 1, definition of the, for example, diaspora literature. Chapter 2, for example, themes in Layla al-Alami's novel. Chapter 3, analysis of, for example, the characters in Layla al-Alami's novel, and put the names of the 4 characters, for example. Because the research in literature is different, okay? So research in literature is mostly literature review. You are reviewing the novel that you are studying. You linking it to other research, etc. You see, so even in translation as well, but for translation sometimes teachers do not like it because a lot of plagiarism happens there. Many students just keep copying and pasting, and that's why supervisors do not recommend it. So you should consult with your supervisors. I advise you to do that. And I hope this answers the question.
Hi, how are you doing?
Yes, hello.
Yes, I have a question regarding this subject. So I'm a literature student, and do we have to read a book or a novel and analyze it, or we can just like take information from different sites and different resources and stick them together to make a research without reading a book or reading a novel? Is it possible?
Could you repeat the last part, please?
The last part, so I said, like, can we just like just choose or find information from different resources instead of reading a novel or a book?
All right. It depends on the suggestions of your supervisor. I advise you not to analyze, for example, a long novel, just a short one. That's why you should be clever here, and you should choose something that will be finished in due time. You see, you can choose, for example, to analyze theater or play, for example, short play, or even poems, for example, or some short stories. But you see, so these are different by Moroccans. Okay, so there are different suggestions, and if you can do bibliographic work by, for example, discussing some themes. But I don't know whether you have to consult with your supervisor, because different supervisors sometimes suggest different things and they try to be lenient with the students. That's why I advise you to check with them whether they, whether they will accept just a bibliographic or meta-analysis study just by reviewing the literature, etc.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. So we have some questions here. First question is by Fatima Bilhassan. She says, can I follow the same techniques in translation?
For translation, yes and no. If you are in the master or the doctoral level, you can follow them, especially if you are in the doctoral level. But for the undergraduate program, I told you what teachers do. They give students, for example, short stories that have never been translated, or some, for example, the teachers have books and they divide the pages among their supervisees, okay? And they ask them to translate them from Arabic, for example, into English. You translate them. You provide your translation. You can use Google Translate, of course, and you can do what is called post-machine editing to rectify the errors that are made by Google Translate. There are other platforms like Yandex, like there are different dictionaries like Lingui if you are translating into French, etc. And you write a commentary. For example, chapter 1, you put translation of chapter, for example, short story of so and so. And you put the translation, okay? And chapter 2, commentary on the translation, and with the difficulties on translation. And you classify those difficulties that you have encountered. For example, every difficulty that you have encountered, you should say it, even though it is related to PDF, for example, or not finding materials, or etc. You just have to be clever and should categorize them thematically. For example, you put linguistic difficulties, and you delve into linguistics, for example, grammatical difficulties, for example, semantic difficulties, etc. And even translation difficulties related to Google Translate, for example, and you put the limitations of Google Translate by like translating polysemous words, that is words that have different meanings, etc., etc. You should describe them this way, and you put conclusion, and that's it. And sometimes the reference that you cite the dictionaries that you have used, and that's it. And this is the research in translation in the undergraduate program. In the doctoral program, no, you should really do serious research there. You should follow the same approach because it's academic work. This is how it is done. Personally, this is how I did it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Next question. Thank you for your this is by Yasin Al-Ajuri. He says, thank you very much for your efforts, Mohammed. Many students, including me, haven't started working on their research paper yet. So what do you advise us to do first before the starting of the second semester?
Yes, I think that even English departments should change this because the research paper you should start working on it from the beginning. But as I advise you to, you should read, and you should find the areas that interest you the most. For example, I can suggest topics if you want. I can suggest to you topics, especially if you are linguistics trained students. You can find even, for example, attitudes of students towards distance education during COVID-19. This is a topic if you are linguistics trained students. You can use a questionnaire and see what. Now, you said that nouns are long. You can, for literature, you can analyze diaspora literature. For example, what other writers have written about Morocco. So it depends on your interest. If you do something and you like it, you are going to work on it. Otherwise, you will not work on that because even motivation has a say in this process. And I advise you to start reading and asking questions and contacting other researchers. For example, why I suggested ResearchGate. This is like the Facebook of researchers. For example, I go to questions here in this section and I put question. For example, hey folks, what do you think about? I have problems with the topic. I don't know what to do. Here you can see technical question or start discussion. And other people, professional researchers, will give you suggestions. But ResearchGate, you should have your academic email. I have my work email here, but here you should have your academic email, your institutional email, because it does not allow you to create an account here. And there is also academia, but academia is not that trustworthy like ResearchGate. So you should ask researchers. For example, this researcher is working, for example, on this area. I'm going to even contact him. I'm going to find his email, or maybe send him a question, etc., and he will answer me, for example. You see, that's it. You should always try to ask questions, and you will get responses. And I hope this answers the question.
Okay, so there are some more questions, but I would like to hear if there is somebody who wants to ask a question directly first.
Yes, I do. So my question is about like we talked in the presentation about the reliability and validity of the research. So I just want to ask you about like this while following like the steps or of the research, what should we like keep in mind while being in the process in order to have like a more reliable and consistent research projects at the end, like the main things that we should keep in mind while we are in the process of conducting research. I hope that my question was clear.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you. For reliability, that's why you should know. That's why you should know before even doing something, especially if you are working in applied linguistics. You should go to YouTube, you look for how to do reliability tests, especially, reliability is not for the research paper, no, it's for the research instrument, that is the way how you collect the data. Whether the instrument that you use in collecting data is reliable or not. For example, if I am using a test, I want to test, for example, your grammatical competence in using, for example, articles. Whether this test is reliable, whether if it is done with different students, will it, for example, present consistent results or no? You see, this is reliability. So reliability, we speak of reliability of research instruments, not of research as a whole. For validity, we can say for the whole research. For the validity, it can be assured by collecting, for example, both data, quantitative and qualitative data. For example, even in novels, even in literature, for example, you can tell me chapter 1 or has more words than chapter 2. For example, chapter 1 has 10,000 words, whereas chapter 2 has just, for example, 200 words. You see, so here, you can combine both quantitative data and qualitative data to give valid results, and even you can cross-check the data. Cross-checking the data that is, for example, if I'm asking students, do you use, for example, ICT, that is information communication technology, to learn English? Yes or no? This is not a good question. You should not ask them a direct question by concluding yes or no. You should tell them, for example, how often do you use ICT? Whether always, usually, sometimes, often, or rarely, and never, on a 5-point Likert scale. You see, this is how validity is assured. This is called construct validity. That is just by appearance of the research instrument. You can say whether the research instrument will produce good results or not. That's why, and I advise you, if you are working in applied linguistics, go look for other questionnaires that have been used by researchers, and you can use like them, or you can even use them and you cite the researcher. And I hope this answers the question.
Yes, it does, and I'm indeed like studying anime in applied linguistics and English language teaching. So, like my area of research is indeed applied linguistics. So, thank you. That was like very beneficial. Thank you so much.
Yes, welcome and good luck with your research.
Thank you.
Hello, Professor. So I want to ask a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to ask you about personal opinions. So in reporting, while reporting our results, yeah, it's obvious that we should not include our personal opinions and personal point of views. But is there any area in our research, maybe in the conclusion, or while analyzing data, when we should include our personal views?
Yes, for personal views, you can include them in recommendations. For example, your recommendations of how others should, make use of your research, etc. This is where you can include interpretations. Interpretations, but should be scientifically based on the findings. Do not just keep saying, in my opinion, I think that people should, but I think that people should do this. Why? Because research shows that the majority of students use the mother tongue. So I think that, for example, students or teachers should pay attention to this issue and should advise to students not to use it, and should sensitize students. For example, if you found, for example, students do not have the academic email, you should say, I think that students should use the academic email because it will help them. You should always relate it to your research. And your interpretation can be good for literature. I don't know whether you are literature stream students or not. So literature is full of interpretations, okay? You put, for example, a quote, and you put a commentary on that. For example, quotes about diaspora literature, for example, about some experience of the writer, and you put your interpretation of that quote. That is your personal reading. This is called interpretivism in research. This is a theory that is called interpretivism. Okay, so this theory it says that researchers construct reality. That is, reality is subjective. It's not objective. You see, it's not like a quantitative data that is objective, where say 20% say this and others say no, for example. But for interpretivism, it's also used, and it can be used in such research, but it depends on the research paper, and it depends on the approach that you are adopting. And I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, it's so insightful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Which is here, Ron. Please, I'd like to ask a question. Initially, I'd like to thank you for this amazing discussion. I've been trying to make an account in ResearchGate, but unfortunately in vain, because I was using my personal email, and I don't know what to do about it. If you can help me with any recommendations,
I have
I'd be
just
thankful.
told you, yes, thank you. I have just told you cannot use your academic email, your personal email to get access to ResearchGate. You need your institutional email. Do you know what an institutional email? Institutional email contains, it's the email that is given by your university. Because ResearchGate contains researchers from different, I don't know how to look out to just go back. For example, you should have your institutional. There is no way to use your personal email. This is my reply. If you don't have your institutional email, you cannot get access to it. And institutional email, get it from university. For example, like this one. Okay. If you don't have your work email or your institutional email, you cannot get access to ResearchGate.
Okay, this is so clear. Thank you.
Mr. Mohammed, we have more questions here. One of them is there any specific method for a research paper on gender?
Sorry, the last part, because the sound was not clear.
Sure. Is there any specific method for a research paper on gender?
Is there a perfect method?
No. Is there any specific method for a research paper on gender?
On gender?
Yes.
That's the problem. You are talking about, you should first specify. I mean, gender, this is a very broad subject. What do you mean by gender first? Whether it is constructed or whether it is, I mean, you see. So you should first specify what area are you investigating in gender. I will give you example. For example, if you are investigating how single mothers live with their children, I can advise you to use phenomenology. Here it investigates phenomenon, that is the experience that the mother, for example, experiences while rearing her child, especially in Moroccan society, etc. And so it depends on your research problem and your research topic. And of course, you should not have broad research topics. You should have very specific research topics. Don't try to solve the problems of the world. You are doing just a research paper. You try to tackle just one problem, and that's it. Okay, I hope this answers the question. Other questions?
We hope,
here? Yes?
like, we expect Ifrad Sabah to, yes. Another question is by Fatima Salam.
Sorry?
She says, could you please write the platform? I couldn't hear you well. Could you please write the platforms? I couldn't hear you well. So here, Fatima Salam, I believe, refers to translation platforms.
Okay, I'm sorry because I myself can't hear you well, so I didn't get what you said.
Simona, can you?
Yes?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
So the question question refers to translation platform.
Can someone else from the club ask this question? Because Sumia, I really can't hear you. So I don't know whether it's a problem of the connection.
Maybe she is asking about the platforms that we can access to find reliable information about translation. So we can find translation platforms to rely on in our
Yes.
research.
Yeah, can you
For the
hear
platform,
me?
yes, I can hear you.
So yeah, the question was like, could you please write down those platforms? And I guess the person was questioning like the translation platforms.
Yes, ResearchGate, you can find even articles about translation. For example, you can look for publications, and you can find, for example, translation research. Okay, and you can, for example, study of the Google Translate. Okay, so you can, for example, start reading this study, for example, etc. So there are different. This platform contains everything. I mean, contains research, even in literature. For example, if I want to investigate even feminism, for example, I can find research on feminism. You see, so just ResearchGate alone can give you a lot of research papers. And even researchers who are affiliated with different universities, you can ask them direct questions as well. If you are looking for dictionaries, I recommend Google Translate, and I recommend Context Reverso, Yandex, and that's it. And even you can go to prose.com. Prose.com. It contains discussion forum.
Hello, Mr. Muhammad. Well, thank you for this amazing presentation. It is really helpful for us as students who want to conduct our researches. And I have a question concerning like the literature option. If we were investigating a specific topic in a certain book or a novel, let's say hybrid identities, for instance, how should we structure our analysis, especially when we're talking about the practical part, when we're analyzing the books and novels, for instance?
Yes, a good question indeed, and many students are asking this. For literature, you have to come up with your outline, okay? And you should first read the novel, for example, or the short story you are dealing with, and then you should put it according to themes. Usually what I do for novels and even films, in the first chapter you talk about background information, for example, about the director or the author, the date of publication, etc., etc. You provide the background. The second chapter you analyze, for example, the plot, that is the starting action, the denouement, the falling action, etc. The third chapter you analyze the characters in terms of physical traits or moral traits, even in customs or in terms of customs if you are dealing with theater. And then the last chapter you deal with themes, for example, post-colonialism theme, for example, or feminist theme, etc. You should have the themes. You should already identify them by reading the novel first. If you don't read it, or if you don't watch the film, you are not going to have. You should be creative. In short, you should be creative, and you should use the knowledge that you studied in the literature modules in your research, especially following the structure of analysis. There are even some websites like Grade Savers that will help you with the structure. And I hope this answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Do we have any other questions, everybody?
Yes, we still have questions in the comment section. So the other question that... Okay, who wants to go first? Yep, okay.
I'll ask the question, then you can read the ones written. My question is, are we free to choose, I mean, obviously by I'm still in my second year, so when it comes to that, are we free to choose the topic that we want, or the supervisor anyway, or are we free to choose whatever topic we
Mr.
want?
Mohammed,
The voice is not clear, but she asks about the supervisor and the topic, I think. Could you, can someone please repeat this for me, because I didn't get
Yes,
the last one.
she asked you whether she could like choose the topic, or the supervisor will choose the topic for her, or is it imposed on her? That's what I understood from her question, if I'm not wrong.
All right. So for supervisors, you should know that supervisors have lots of work to do, and they have many students. So we have a teacher supervisor ratio. We have like 20 supervisees for one teacher. This is just for the undergraduate program, let alone the master as well as the doctoral program. So teachers usually give you broad areas where you can have freedom to look for topics. For example, if your supervisor teaches, for example, modules of literature, of course you are working in literature streams. You are going to analyze a novel or short story, or if some of your supervisor is working on media, you should work on media as well, because they cannot deal with the linguistic topics, because each one has his or her specialization, so to speak. So sometimes supervisors try to assign topics. If they assign topics to you, that's good, because it will save you from a lot of work, especially at this stage. Otherwise, they give you just areas, broad areas, but you have to narrow down the topic. But remember this, please try to stick to the topics that are related to English department. We don't like to see students who are working on topics that are very broad, working on, for example, politics or medicine, or an area that is broader. You see, if you are working on medicine, for example, link it to linguistics or literature, for example, by analyzing a novel that deals with medicine, or analyzing, for example, how doctors use the language with their patients, etc. So, and this is, I think, this is in general. I hope this answers the question.
Okay, if I may.
Yes.
All right, I've got two questions. First one is because I've missed the very first part of the presentation. I was wondering whether you will be able to share with us the presentation somewhere. That's one thing. The second is connected with the research. I'm working on discourse analysis, and I was wondering if I should mention critical discourse analysis theories in the first part, which is literature review, and the second thing is about the study. I'm thinking of questionnaire, because I'm going to have a part for teachers' varied identities in the classroom, in ESL classrooms, and I was wondering whether I should also include interviews with teachers or students. Thank you.
All right, I think that there are many questions, but I'm going to answer one by one. If I forget someone, I will go back to you. So anyway, for the one who is working on discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis by Fairclough, etc., you should, first of all, you have to identify whether you are doing critical discourse analysis on a media report, or governmental reports, or newspaper reports, or what. So you should have the corpus first. You should find the text. Okay. The second thing, critical discourse analysis is highly recommended because it's the latest one, I think. There is also multimodal analysis. Okay, multimodal analysis analyzes even pictures. Okay, so you can look for that as well. This is, I think, the latest one because many doctoral students are working on that. So I think that's it. I don't know. Could you please repeat the other questions? For the video you are going to find it in YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, also the African Club YouTube channel. You just can type just my name on YouTube. You can even find videos about how to do copy and paste from Google Forms and other useful videos, especially if you are working on linguistic stream, working on using SPSS and other software like this. Okay, please could you repeat other questions because I didn't get them?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is connected with SPSS because I suppose I should use it. Yeah, it is about the analysis chapter, or yeah, should I use only a questionnaire or also an interview? Well, to put you in the picture, I'm working on what was it? I think investigating teachers and students of advanced level in Morocco.
Okay, for the research instruments, you can use questionnaire and you can use an interview. This depends on your research questions. For example, could you please repeat the topic, because he's working on the teacher and student, and what exactly?
It is discourse analysis of the varied identity of teachers and students of ESL in an advanced ESL classroom.
I see. So, critical discourse analysis, which means that you have to attend classes and observe the interactions, and you see who participates. Yes, who participates more, etc., who takes the time in speaking with the teacher or student. This is in one way. You can consider observation.
All right.
I don't know whether I hear an echo of myself or someone is speaking. You can use an observation, and now because due to COVID-19, you can just attend virtual classrooms, or go to YouTube and see how teachers give their presentations, and you try to analyze videos, okay, and see how much time they take in videos, or etc., and what they say. You can analyze that using content analysis. And critical discourse analysis, of course, by you investigating the language. Of course, there are some elements like passivization, like nominalization, etc., etc. Okay, that's it, I think, for this.
Thank you. We still have some questions written here. So the question by Imad Boutalib says, what are the criteria that we need to follow when generating a research question?
All right, for the criteria, there are not criteria in fact, but I can say this research questions stem from the research problem. Okay, I will give you an example. Okay, I'm going to go to the example that I gave you about, okay, let's say another example about YouTube. Whether students use YouTube in learning, for example, speaking, okay? Here I can ask questions like this. For example, how often do students use YouTube? For example, watch once a day, or twice, etc., etc. This is the first thing. Another question, why do students use questions? You know, you learned already WH questions. You try to use them, that's it. You can ask 4 questions, but you should analyze them. For example, question 1 about how often do students use YouTube, and this should be analyzed using questionnaire by asking students how often do you use, for example, YouTube. Another question, why do you use YouTube? For example, another question, in what way do you use YouTube? Do you use YouTube just to learn English, or even to do other things, etc.? Is YouTube helpful for you? Okay, so these are the questions that are related to this research problem of whether YouTube is beneficial for EFL learners or not. This is an example, and of course, my methodology is like this. The first question, especially if you are working on applied linguistics, use how often do students use, what is this use, why do they use it, and in what way, for example, do they use it, and whether is it effective or not. So these are the 5 questions that I usually ask.
Thank you.
Yes, other questions?
There is another question by Asiya Haddawi and Rania Jamh. What are some suggestions for linguistics stream students?
For linguistics stream students, so if you are willing to do teaching once you get your BA, you should work on applied linguistics better, because applied linguistics gives you a lot of things to work on. You can work on teaching, because applied linguistics is about teaching and learning languages. This is how it is in short, especially in Moroccan English departments. If you want to work on linguistics per se, you should use introspection. That is, you are the native speaker of Moroccan Arabic. You say, for example, you take a linguistic feature, for example, the use of, for example, let's say, okay, let's say another one related to social linguistics about code switching. Okay, you can use code switching. You can investigate code switching among Moroccan EFL learners, for example. How often Moroccan students in so-and-so university resort to code switching. If you are using, for example, in syntax, you can use optimality theory. In phonology, you can analyze, for example, the pronunciation mistakes that students make while speaking. This is an area that is called error analysis, and I suggest looking at references like Seelenker, 1972, and Corder, if I still remember, 1973, etc. About the significance of language errors. There are different areas in linguistics, and I advise you to choose applied linguistics.
Thank you. There is another question by Iman Akniwan. She says, could you please provide us with the tools to read more effectively in smarter books for ESP research and organize our ideas, especially for linguistics students major?
Okay, for ESP, English for, does she mean English for specific purpose, or she means in ends of studies projects? I don't know. So, how to read effectively? So if you go to articles, you are going to find abstract. Try to read just the abstract. Don't read the full article. I'm just looking for an example here to show you this. So this is an abstract, usually contains everything. For example, an abstract. Because I don't have time to read the full article, download it and keep reading. I know that I'm not going to read it anyway. So I should just go to the abstract, and there are two techniques in reading. The first one is skimming, that is you just read the main ideas, and another one is scanning, that is you look for specific information. So you should just skim, and you should put notes. If you are using your laptop, if you have a laptop and you are using it, you try to take notes, and you open, for example, Microsoft Office Word, and you copy and paste to the Microsoft Office window, and you put the reference. And if you are using Google ResearchGate, I advise you to keep a record of the references. There is a way to do that. Through this way, you export citation, and it will give you the citation like this. You download it in a note, and you paste it to your research paper like this. You see? Okay, so this is the way I collect data, in review of literature. I think you should organize your time, by the way. You should manage your time, because, you know, time flies if you don't do things. And I hope these tips and answers help you.
Thank you. Huda Marwan said, and I quote, "First of all, thank you for this informative presentation. Very concise and helpful. I think most students who have a problem with finding a topic is generally about the field of their research. For example, if they want to research in pragmatics or semantics or applied linguistics, it's harder to find a topic that will be accepted by professors, especially that professors only take on topics that are within their specialty. How can students tackle that?"
Yes, how they can tackle that is as follows. For example, if you first of all look at the profile of your supervisor. You just type his name or her name on Google and put PDF besides his name, and he will give you all the publications, because they are called teacher researchers. They are supposed to do research. And you download that article that is written by your supervisor, read it, and this will give you an idea about your supervisor. Okay, you see what he likes and what he doesn't like, or she doesn't like. All right. This is how, if you want to get good grades, and the majority of students want to get good grades, try to follow the same methodology that he or she followed, because you know, maybe they would like, because they are the areas in which they are specialized, so they will be happy to learn about them more. So this is my advice for you in dealing with your supervisors. And I hope this answers the question.
There is another question that says, if someone is interested in AI and wants to work in computer synthesis in future programming, what field should they consider?
For programming, there is what is called computational linguistic. Okay, computational linguistic. You can consider this because it gives you the linguistics that is used for programming, especially the notation, etc. So you can look for this area, computational linguistics. For those who are interested in programming, I think this will help them a lot. Okay, another question?
Thank you so much. Anyone has any other question?
All right, it seems that no one has a question. Does anybody has a question? Anyone else? There is another question. Amal, would you want to read it?
Can you just go for it, Ayman?
For translation, should the method be quantitative, qualitative, or both? My last question, please. Thanks in advance.
For translation, is it for the undergraduate program or the master program? I don't know.
It's undergraduate program.
Yes, for the undergraduate program, it can be both. So for me, it can be mixed method. I'm going to tell you how it will be done. So, for example, you translate a short story that has never been translated into English, and better it should be a Moroccan one, because you are going to serve Moroccan society. Once you translate it, you try to find, for example, some difficulties. I'm going to tell you examples. Like, for example, word order. In Arabic, we say, for example, al-manzil kabir. We start with the noun and sifa, ism and sifa. But in English, we reverse it. We reverse the order. We say, for example, a big house. You see? So this is word order. This is one difficulty, for example, word order. Machine translation doesn't deal with word order. And you count how many instances of word order within that document. And Microsoft Office Word will give you the count of how many words, okay? And you report that on a table. For example, you put word or reorder. There are, for example, 6 cases of word order. And you put, you analyze them qualitatively in the commentary. You say, for example, the first case, the second case, and you put examples. And in the table above, it contains quantitative data. So you can see here, you can combine both quantitative and qualitative data. And this will give you a good chance to show your potential to your supervisors, etc. And I hope this answers the question.
Well, thank you so much. It has, in fact. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, other questions, if any? Otherwise, we can conclude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. I think if they have more questions, they can send them privately or on WhatsApp or something, okay? Because this is supposed to reach an end now. And I would like to thank you on behalf of the African Club for everything, and I give the word to Mr. Ayman.
Yes, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you, Professor. It has been a wonderful lecture, very detailed, very specific, and also very general and can be applied to all kinds of fields. It has been an honor having you. I'm pretty sure everyone has enjoyed this lecture immensely, and we look forward to having you further in the future, inshallah, and we wish you the best of luck in your academic career. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. I would like to thank you as well. If you have questions, there is a WhatsApp group. You can even communicate with the members of the African Club. And we can, if you need other webinars, we can even organize other webinars, inshallah, in the future. And I
absolutely, that would be good.
Yes.
Thank you, and we wish everybody the best of luck, and we will see you next time, inshallah, very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Bye for your efforts. Bye. Thank you.